and what we need to do to deal with changes.
Well, this is the biggest aircraft order in Qantas history.
And what we need to do to deal with changes? Well, this is the biggest aircraft order in Qantas history. It includes 12 Airbus A350-1000 jets specifically designed for long-haul flight. Just when everyone thought that things could not get any worse for Boeing, 3 airlines, Emirates, KLM, and Qantas, have dropped shocking announcements that could have significant implications for the American aircraft manufacturer. For years, these airlines stuck with Boeing as their go-to choice. Now, they have surprised many by turning to Boeing's biggest rival, Airbus, and they have reaffirmed their decision by placing significant orders for Airbus aircraft. So, why have these airlines made such audacious moves? And what does this mean for Boeing, Airbus, and the industry at large? Let's find out. Let us start off with Emirates, the biggest airline in the Middle East by brand value. This airline has gained a reputation for being one of Boeing's largest customers globally. It even holds the record for being the largest operator of the Boeing 77 aircraft type. In addition to that, currently, it holds the record for the largest order of the new Boeing 7X aircraft, standing at a whopping 205 units. The relationship between Boeing and Emirates has been so strong, so much so that a few years ago, Boeing's then Senior Vice President for the Middle East, Central and South Asia Sales, Martin Bentrot, was quoted saying, "We already share a very close relationship with our partners at Emirates, as is reflected by their contribution to the 777 program. And we have no doubt that this will continue in the future." Too many. The relationship that these partners had forged was so strong and near unbreakable. However, Emirates has caught everyone by surprise after announcing an agreement with Boeing's biggest industry rival, Airbus. It started in 2019 when the carrier announced that it had placed an order for 50 units of the Airbus A350-90 widebody airliner valued at $16 billion. Many did not read much into this move, as they perceived it to be a move aimed at helping Emirates diversify its fleet. However, 4 years later, at the Dubai Air Show, it announced yet another agreement with Airbus for the purchase of an additional 15 units of the A350-900 worth $9 billion, bringing the total number of aircraft on order to 65 units. According to Airbus Chief Commercial Officer and Head of Airbus International, Christian Scherer, this move by Emirates marked a significant step toward further solidifying their relationship and reaffirming their commitment to future collaborations. And that's not all. There are reports that Emirates' management is exploring the possibility of placing orders for the new A350 freighter aircraft as it seeks to position itself strategically to capitalize on the soaring demand for air cargo transport. Moving on, 3,215 miles away from Dubai, yet another carrier has announced its decision to move away from Boeing and embrace Airbus. And that is none other than KLM Royal Dutch Airline. The flag carrier of the Netherlands has also made a name for itself as a long-standing and loyal Boeing customer. This relationship goes way back to March 1967, when it placed an order for its first ever Boeing aircraft, a Boeing 747 jumbo jet. Ever since, it has gone on to become one of the largest Boeing aircraft operators globally. It also prides itself to be among the few airlines that became synonymous with the Boeing 747 jumbo jet, having operated a total of 22 units of this iconic jet. The relationship between the carrier and the American aircraft manufacturer also seemed to be unbreakable, especially considering the utterances of Air France-KLM chief executive Ben Smith. According to Smith, the airline was committed to its relationship with Boeing and was looking toward being an all-Boeing airline in the next few years. It was looking to attain this objective by replacing its aging Airbus A330 aircraft with newer and more fuel-efficient Boeing 77 and 787 Dreamliner wide-body aircraft. However, in a shocking turn of events, KLM has announced that it had placed an order for 50 units of the Airbus A350-1000 with an option for 40 more units in the future. And this is where things get interesting. The Airbus aircraft on order are meant to replace the aging Boeing wide-body airliners in KLM's fleet. In essence, this move is in direct contradiction of the earlier statement by Ben Smith. In addition to that, KLM has announced plans to take deliveries of 3 units of the all-new Airbus A350 freighter version. These units will replace the older Boeing 747 freighters currently operating under its freighter division, KLM Cargo. This is utterly surprising, especially considering the fact that the airline had an option to replace the Boeing cargo airlifters with other Boeing options such as the Boeing 77F. To add insult to injury, KLM has also announced plans to renew its narrow-body fleet by replacing its Boeing jets with Airbus-made ones. Specifically, the carrier has announced an agreement with Airbus for the purchase of 100 units of the Airbus A320 Neo and the A321 Neo narrow-body aircraft. The airline stated that this move was informed by the need to cut down on the high operational and maintenance costs associated with the aging 737 aircraft currently in its fleet, which are averaging about 18 years. It is important to know that KLM had an option to choose the newer 737 MAX variant to replace these aging Boeing jets. However, the decision to overlook the MAX series in favor of the European-made aircraft has turned heads within aviation circles, with many wondering why the carrier would pull such a move. Shockingly, these two airlines are not the only long-standing Boeing customers that have sent shockwaves throughout the industry after snubbing and aligning with its rival Airbus. Qantas has also announced its decision to order 60 units of Airbus-made jets. This comprises 28 units of the Airbus A321XLR, 20 units of the Airbus A220, and 12 units of a specially modified Airbus A35010, known as the Airbus A350-1000LR, the A321XLR, and the A22300. Jets will be deployed on domestic and regional flights and are intended to replace the aging Boeing 737-800 jets. In a similar move to KLM's, Qantas has also overlooked newer Boeing MAX jets and selected Airbus as the replacement to the American-made aircraft. Moving on to the previously mentioned A350-0100, Qantas intends to deploy these jets on Project Sunrise Qantas program that will establish non-stop flights from the east coast of Australia to destinations such as London, New York, and Cape Town. This aircraft is unique since Qantas has requested Airbus to install an extra fuel tank to enable the aircraft to carry enough fuel for the ultra-long-haul flight. This is the same thing that Singapore Airlines did with its specialized A350-900 that it deploys on its Singapore to New York flight. Now, why is this move by Qantas shocking? You see, when Qantas announced Project Sunrise, it invited both Boeing and Airbus to pitch their best aircraft. Boeing pitched the new Boeing 77X, while Airbus pitched the A350. Many thought that this would be a no-brainer, and Qantas would go with Boeing. This conclusion might be justified, considering that it had proven to be a loyal Boeing customer over the years. In fact, it was once an all-Boeing 747 airline between 1979 and 1985. All indicators pointed toward the carrier selecting the 777X. However, to everyone's shock, it selected the A350-1000, marking yet another departure from Boeing to Airbus by a long-standing Boeing customer. These announcements have triggered one critical question. Why would these three airlines decide to switch from Boeing to Airbus? There might be multiple reasons that could have prompted these carriers to make the shocking decisions to snub Boeing in favor of Airbus. First, it is possible that the current operational dynamics in both Airbus and Boeing could have played a role. Simply, the questions that these airlines might have asked themselves is, where are we more likely to receive aircraft sooner? To answer that question, we need to look at Boeing first. It is obvious that the American aircraft manufacturer is currently facing major challenges concerning the certification of the larger Boeing 77X and the smaller Boeing 737 MAX 7 and 10. Let us start with the 777X and look at the problems facing the aircraft. and how they might have pushed these airlines away. When Boeing announced this aircraft program in 2013, it envisioned having the aircraft ready for commercial service in 2020. However, a series of setbacks have seen Boeing miss that deadline, as well as multiple others that it is set after missing the first one. The first problem that made it impossible to attain the 2020 timeline was a design flaw in the General Electric GE9X engine powering the aircraft that mandated a complete redesign in 2019. This was followed by a door blowout on the static test frame during the ultimate load test in the same year. This incident casted doubts among regulatory authorities and industry experts as they started questioning the structural integrity and design maturity of the program. This incident was followed by the global COVID-19 pandemic, which brought everything to a standstill. In 2021, the Federal Aviation Administration notified Boeing that it would delay the type certification until mid to late 2023. A year later, yet another engine issue saw the timeline of entry into service slip once again. The most recent one occurred in August 2024 when the engineering team discovered cracks in some of the thrust lengths. Now, Boeing expects to have the aircraft ready for commercial service in 2026. However, some industry stakeholders, such as Emirates, have questioned Boeing's ability to meet that target, stating that the most logical timeline would be 2027 or even 2028. Back to the three carriers. It is likely that they might have decided to order from Airbus. Additionally, it has been revealed that the MAX's anti-ice system is prone to overheating in certain conditions. If this happens, the engine inlets in a barrel could fail, potentially increasing the risk of a fatal crash. Boeing has also been seeking a safety exemption for these aircraft in relation to the engine indicator system. The plane maker is arguing that the current systems, which pilots must manually manage to avoid engine inlet overheating, already offer an equivalent level of safety, and that a temporary waiver would simply speed up deliveries. However, this move by Boeing has caused tensions between the company and lawmakers and regulators who argue that such an exemption would amount to putting profits over safety. Now, with these challenges in the picture, it goes without saying that Boeing might not manage to get these aircraft ready for service as fast as airlines might need them. This leaves the likes of Emirates, KLM, and Qantas with only one choice, leaning toward the manufacturer that guarantees timely delivery, and that is Airbus. Another factor that could have triggered these airlines to snub Boeing and lean toward Airbus has to do with the fact that the delays by Boeing come at a time when the industry is experiencing soaring demand for air passenger travel. In 2024, data by the International Air Transport Association showed that total fuller traffic, measured in revenue passenger kilometers, increased by 10.4% year. This was also 8% above pre-pandemic levels in the same year. International fuller traffic increased 13.6% compared to 2023, while capacity rose 12.8%. Domestic fuller traffic also increased by 5.7% compared to 2023, while capacity soared by 2.5%. Looking ahead, industry analysts project that global air travel will increase by more than 40% by 2030 compared to the pre-pandemic levels. Over the next 2 decades, this demand is projected to increase by an average of 4.3% per annum. So what does all these numbers mean? Simple. Airlines need aircraft to ensure that they are strategically positioned to cater to this demand. So when these airlines get the smallest clue that an aircraft manufacturer might not be in a position to deliver aircraft within reasonable time, they are more likely to look for other alternatives in the market. And that is exactly the case with Emirates, KLM, and Qantas. They have realized that currently, Boeing might not be in a position to meet their delivery demands. And this could have been a major driver behind their decisions to work with Airbus, despite being long-standing Boeing customers. We also cannot overlook the fact that these airlines might have pitted the aircraft in contention against each other in order to determine the option that guarantees the best fuel efficiency, an aspect that gives Airbus the upper hand. You see, in the wide-body niche, Airbus came up with an ingenious way to enhance the fuel efficiency of the A350, and that is the integration of an intelligent airframe as well as a carbon fiber reinforced polymer wing design. This design helped in attaining a remarkable 25% improvement in fuel efficiency compared to other alternatives in this category. We should not forget that the A350 comprises 53% composites compared to the 787, which comprises only 50%, despite seeming minute. This difference translates to significant fuel efficiency for the A350 in the long term. Compared to the 787. Moving over to the narrow-body niche, Airbus also outperforms its American rival. The A320neo burns 15 to 20% less fuel than its older A320 current engine option model, while the 737 MAX delivers around a 14 to 15% improved fuel consumption compared to its predecessor, the 737 next generation. On digging a little deeper, numbers have shown that the A321neo also outperforms the 737 MAX by offering between 31 and 39% more seats per gallon than a 737 MAX 8, which offers anywhere between 15 and 24%. We cannot overlook the fact that Airbus's advanced sharklets and newer engine tech also give the aircraft an edge ahead of Boeing's split-tip winglet. In short, if the likes of KM want to slash fuel bills and emissions, the A320neo family is undoubtedly the smarter bet, and that could have been the reason behind the decision by the Dutch flag carrier to overlook Boeing in favor of Airbus in its fleet renewal plans. Also, it is possible that these airlines might have decided to stay clear of Boeing, at least until it puts its house in order in the last few years. Boeing has come under increased scrutiny for what has been termed as a toxic work culture that prioritizes profits over safety and quality. On different instances, current and former Boeing employees have come forward with damning allegations of gross violations of safety procedures in the manufacturing process. They've gone further to state that whenever they express concerns about these violations, they were threatened and told to do whatever it takes to have aircraft ready as quickly as possible. A recent audit by the Federal Aviation Administration also corroborated these claims after findings showed evidence of gross violations of regulatory standards. Furthermore, the American aircraft manufacturer has come under sharp criticism for laying off experienced engineers and replacing them with fairly inexperienced ones. This has created a significant skill gap within the company, and many people fear that this might soon start showing in the form of tragic crashes. It goes without saying that any airline would choose to take a step back and see how Boeing first addresses these issues before committing to purchasing new aircraft from the company. This could be the case with Emirates, KLM, and Qantas. They have made a bold decision to keep off Boeing jets until they are convinced that the plane maker has satisfactorily addressed all the issues raised and that it has adopted a culture that prioritizes safety, innovation, and quality rather than the bottom line. Having looked at some of the probable factors that could have triggered this decision, let us now uncover what the move by these airlines to overlook Boeing in favor of Airbus means to the two aircraft manufacturers and to the larger commercial aviation industry. For Airbus, the move by these carriers is music to the ears. It is a clear indicator that it now has the upper hand in the decade-long battle with Boeing for supremacy in the industry. Winning over the confidence of major carriers such as Emirates could prove to be the much-needed boost that the European aircraft manufacturer needed to claim the position of the undisputed global leader in aircraft manufacturing. The revenue it will attain from these deals could then be reinvested into other operational areas aimed at enhancing its innovation, quality, and overall competitiveness in the industry. For instance, it could inject more resources into research and development and advance some of its programs that are already in the pipeline. One such program that could position the plane maker miles ahead of the competition is the Zero-E program. Here, Airbus is working to develop a hydrogen engine with the capacity to power commercial aircraft by 2035. The vision entails integrating a number of fuel cell stacks in order to produce energy that reaches the megawatt range. just sufficient to produce a sufficient level of thrust needed to power a commercial aircraft without the need for traditional fuel backup. Also, the company is exploring the possibility of incorporating a fully electric concept that entails an electric propeller system that will operate collaboratively with the hydrogen system. Investing more resources into this program could see Airbus unlock impressive efficiency levels that could take Boeing a long time to attain. Another program that Airbus could invest more in is known as the Extra Performance Wing project. In this project, the plane maker is working on developing active control technologies that enable an aircraft wing to change its shape and form during flight, all in an effort to optimize aerodynamics and foster better efficiency. Once again, attaining this milestone could further enhance Airbus's competitiveness in the industry, while leaving Boeing behind and compelling it to play catch-up. Moreover, the move by Emirates, KLM, and Qantas could be the trigger that Airbus needed to finally commit fully to the idea of producing a new aircraft known as the Airbus A350-000. The European aircraft manufacturer has been exploring this idea for quite some time now, and the increased attention from such major carriers might just be the push that Airbus needs to finally actualize this vision. The 2000 variant is essentially a stretched version of the 1000 variant and will have 50 additional seats, thus guaranteeing airlines more revenue as well as passenger comfort and convenience, especially on long-haul flights. Now, the A350-000 could be a perfect fit for carriers like Emirates that have continuously urged aircraft manufacturers to consider developing high-capacity carriers. Also, at some point in the future, Emirates and Qantas will have to replace the Airbus A380 aircraft in its fleet, and what better way for Airbus to capitalize on that than by developing an aircraft that could be the best replacement for the Super Jumbo when that time comes. However, industry experts and analysts also concur on one thing. These orders by the three airlines could also be seen as a litmus test for Airbus. How so? You see, at the moment, Airbus is seen as the more reliable aircraft manufacturer of the two, and this could be the best time to prove that. However, it is important to keep in mind that Airbus's order backlog as of December 2024 is a whopping 8,658 aircraft, this being 363 more than Boeing. This could be seen to mean that these airlines have high confidence levels in Airbus's capacity to deliver the ordered jets within the agreed timelines, despite having a longer